Little House on the Prairie wasn't just a television show. It was a piece of America's soul. With its heartfelt storytelling, rustic charm, and unforgettable characters, it brought the struggles and beauty of pioneer life into living rooms across the world. Week after week, families tuned in to watch the lives of the Ingalls family unfold in the little town of Walnut Grove. But while the show was a beacon of warmth and nostalgia, the real lives of the actors behind these iconic roles were often far more complex. Many of them faced personal storms, hidden struggles, and private battles that never made it to the screen. And sadly, many of these beloved stars are no longer with us. What happened to Michael Landon, the man who played Charles Ingalls, the rock of the family and the show itself? What about the unforgettable Catherine McGregor, who brought Harriet Olsen to life with such delicious spite? Which stars faded quietly from the spotlight? And which ones left this world with lingering questions or heartbreaking endings? This video will explore the real-life stories behind the actors who made Little House a legend. From early success to later scandals, from fame to personal tragedy, their journeys were filled with more drama than any episode could hold. So join us as we revisit the Prairie, not just through the characters, but through the real lives of those who played them. Their stories deserve to be remembered. Some may warm your heart, others might just break it. And if you love stories like these, don't forget to subscribe for more. Michael Landon, born Eugene Maurice Orwitz on October 31st, 1936, was more than just the star of Little House on the Prairie. He was its beating heart. As Charles Ingalls, he became America's ideal father figure, strong, kind, and unwavering in his values. But behind the warm, familiar smile was a man with a far more complicated life. Landon's childhood was marked by instability and pain. His mother's mental health struggles and his family's constant turmoil shaped him into someone who craved control and perfection. That drive pushed him to success, first in Bonanza, then in Little House, where he didn't just act. He also wrote, directed, and produced, shaping nearly every frame of the show. At 37, he brought Charles Ingalls to life in a way that felt honest and inspiring. But his off-screen life was often under scrutiny. 3 marriages, 2 divorces, and rumors of affairs created waves in Hollywood. Some cast members adored him. Others found him difficult and demanding behind scenes. After Little House, Landon created Highway to Heaven, another hit filled with hope and morality. Just as he seemed to be entering a new chapter, tragedy struck. In April 1991, he was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. By July 1st, he was gone, only 54 years old. Michael Landon's legacy is powerful. He made millions believe in the goodness of people, the strength of family, and the beauty of simple living. Flawed, but unforgettable, he remains one of television's most iconic figures. The Prairie hasn't been the same without him. Few characters in Little House on the Prairie stirred up more trouble or laughter than Harriet Olsen. And behind that perfectly curled hair and withering glare was Catherine McGregor, a stage-trained actress with razor-sharp wit and a flair for the theatrical. Born Dorlee Dean McGregor on January 12, 1925, in Glendale, California, Catherine's journey to television fame was long and winding. She studied acting in New York under the legendary Sanford Meisner and made a name for herself on the stage before ever setting foot in Walnut Grove. By the time she joined the cast at age 49, she had sharpened her craft and was ready to leave a mark. And leave a mark she did. As the town's snobby, scheming mercantile owner, Harriet Olsen was the perfect antagonist. She was ridiculous, hilarious, and endlessly entertaining. But what most fans didn't know was that Catherine had a hand in shaping that character. She infused Harriet with over-the-top vanity and comedic timing that kept her from being truly evil. The result was a character viewers loved to hate, and sometimes just loved. Off-screen, Catherine was fiercely private. She avoided Hollywood's party scene and turned down offers that didn't align with her values. She was also a devout Hindu, practicing her faith quietly and seriously. Unlike many of her co-stars, she didn't return for the final Little House movies. She had found a different path, one that led inward rather than toward the spotlight. Catherine McGregor passed away on November 13, 2018, at the age of 93. She had lived a long, full life and remained largely out of the public eye in her later years. But to anyone who ever watched the show, she was unforgettable. Harriet Olsen may have been the town pest, but Catherine made her iconic. In a show filled with heart, she gave it spice, and without her, Walnut Grove would have been just a little too quiet. In a town full of drama, gossip, and small-town squabbles, one man always kept his cool: Nels Olsen, the long-suffering husband of the ever-demanding Harriet. And it was Richard Bull who brought him to life with quiet charm, humor, and a whole lot of heart. Born on June 26, 1924, in Zion, Illinois, Richard Bull was a veteran of the stage and screen long before he joined Little House on the Prairie. He was 50 years old when he first appeared on the show in 1974, and by then, he had already built a respectable career as a character actor, known for his reliability and subtlety, traits that made him the perfect match for Nels. While Harriet stormed and schemed her way through Walnut Grove, Nels stood firm, delivering sarcastic one-liners, warm advice, and the occasional well-timed escape to the saloon. But there was more to Nels than just comic relief. Through Bull's performance, the character became a symbol of quiet endurance, a man with deep integrity who often kept his family and the town grounded. Off camera, Richard was the complete opposite of his on-screen wife. While Catherine McGregor was lively and theatrical, Bull was calm, kind, and deeply respected by cast and crew. He formed a close bond with his co-stars, especially Michael Landon, and worked steadily throughout the series and in several TV movies afterward. After Little House, he continued acting in smaller roles, including a memorable appearance on ER. But he never sought fame. Instead, he lived a modest life with his wife, actress Barbara Callentine, whom he was married to for over 65 years, a rare love story in Hollywood. Richard Bull passed away on February 3, 2014, at the age of 89. He left behind a body of work that reflected his quiet strength and a legacy defined not by flash, but by steady, genuine warmth. In a world of loud personalities, Richard Bull reminded us that sometimes the strongest voice is the softest one. If Walnut Grove had a steady hand, a comforting presence in its most desperate moments, it was Dr. Hiram Baker. And the man behind the role, Kevin Hagen, brought a quiet compassion and humble wisdom to the frontier town, traits that defined both his character and the man himself. Born on April 3, 1928, in Chicago, Illinois, Kevin Hagen didn't set out to be an actor. He originally pursued a career in law, but eventually turned toward the performing arts. By the time Little House on the Prairie began, he was already an experienced actor with roles in Perry Mason, Bonanza, and Gunsmoke. At age 45, he stepped into the role of Dr. Baker and never looked back. As the town doctor, Hagen played one of the most dependable characters on the show. Dr. Baker wasn't flashy or dramatic. He was the calm in the storm, the man who delivered babies, treated injuries, and often gave more emotional comfort than medical care. Through Hagen's performance, the doctor became a pillar of the community, stoic, sincere, and deeply trusted. Off-screen, Kevin Hagen was just as kind-hearted. He was beloved by the cast, known for his gentle humor and warm presence. Unlike some of the show's bigger personalities, Hagen never chased the spotlight. He was happy to support the ensemble and let his work speak for itself. After Little House, Hagen continued to act, even reprising his role as Dr. Baker in the reunion specials. But as the years went on, he moved away from Hollywood, settling into a quieter life in Oregon. Kevin Hagen passed away on July 9, 2005, at the age of 77 after a battle with esophageal cancer. Though he had left the screen, he never left the hearts of Little House fans. To many, he wasn't just a character. He was the doctor they wish they had. His legacy lives not in headlines, but in the quiet way he made people feel safe, both on and off the prairie. In a town filled with hardship and triumph, There needed to be a voice of guidance, someone who brought faith, wisdom, and quiet strength to the people of Walnut Grove. That voice belonged to Reverend Robert Alden, portrayed with gentle authority by Dabbs Greer. Born on April 2, 1917, in Fairview, Missouri, Robert William Dabbs Greer was a seasoned actor long before he stepped into the pulpit of Walnut Grove's little church. By the time Little House on the Prairie began, he was already in his late 50s, with hundreds of TV and film appearances to his name, including The Twilight Zone, The Rifleman, and Gunsmoke. He was the kind of actor who could slip into any role and make it feel like home. As Reverend Alden, Greer became the spiritual center of Little House. He wasn't preachy or severe. He was patient, understanding, and full of quiet warmth. Whether presiding over weddings, funerals, or Sunday services, his character reminded viewers of the moral compass that helped frontier communities survive. Off-screen, Dabbs Greer was just as humble, never interested in fame. He was more at home in character roles than in the spotlight. He never married, never sought the tabloid attention that often followed actors. He simply worked, and worked well, for over 5 decades. Even after Little House ended, Greer's career didn't slow down. One of his most touching roles came late in life, where he portrayed the older version of Tom Hanks' character in The Green Mile, 1999, a performance that reminded everyone of his immense range and humanity. Dabbs Greer passed away on April 28, 2007, at the age of 90. He died quietly, without scandal or spectacle, just as he had lived. But his presence on Little House left an indelible mark. He was the soul of Walnut Grove, and the kind of man who didn't just speak about goodness, he embodied it. Victor French was the kind of actor who could make you laugh, cry, and feel safe, all in the same scene. As Isaiah Edwards, the gruff, bearded mountain man with a heart of gold, he became one of the most beloved characters in Little House on the Prairie. But behind the role was a man whose real-life story was every bit as layered and just as emotional. Born on December 4, 1934, in Santa Barbara, California, Victor French grew up surrounded by show business. His father was a stuntman and actor, and Victor naturally followed in his footsteps. Known early in his career for playing villains in westerns, French surprised audiences when he took on the role of Mr. Edwards, a character full of warmth, loyalty, and emotional depth. At 40 years old, when Little House began, French quickly became a fan favorite. Mr. Edwards wasn't perfect. He drank too much, had a rough past, and often clashed with the world around him. But he loved fiercely, especially the Ingalls family, and brought a raw humanity to every scene. It was a role French cherished, and he poured himself into it. His bond with Michael Landon was more than just on-screen chemistry. They were best friends in real life. That connection carried over to Highway to Heaven, where French co-starred alongside Landon again, this time as an angel's companion spreading kindness on Earth. But life took a heartbreaking turn. In 1989, Victor French was diagnosed with lung cancer. He kept his illness quiet, avoiding the spotlight as his health declined. On June 15, 1989, he passed away at just 54 years old, the same age Michael Landon would be when he died 2 years later. Victor French left behind more than just memorable performances. He left behind the image of a flawed but good man, a symbol of redemption, resilience, and unconditional love. He may have been rough around the edges, but he reminded us that sometimes the most broken people have the biggest hearts. When Merlin Olsen appeared on Little House on the Prairie as Jonathan Garvey, it was hard not to notice him. Towering, soft-spoken, and radiating a quiet strength. He felt like a man carved out of the very landscape of Walnut Grove. But few knew the depth of the man behind the character. A football legend who found unexpected purpose in the world of acting. Born on September 15, 1940, in Logan, Utah, Merlin Olsen didn't start as an actor. He started as a force of nature on the football field, a defensive tackle for the Los Angeles Rams. He was one of the most respected and feared players of his time. He was a 14-time Pro Bowl selection and was later inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. But beneath his fearsome athletic exterior was a deeply thoughtful and kind-hearted man. At age 37, shortly after retiring from the NFL, Olsen joined the cast of Little House. As Jonathan Garvey, he played a hardworking farmer and loyal friend to Charles Ingalls. His chemistry with Michael Landon was natural and strong, perhaps a reflection of the mutual respect they shared. Garvey wasn't just muscle. He was a father, a husband, and a man trying to do right by his family, and Merlin portrayed that with grace and sincerity. After leaving Little House, Olsen continued acting, starring in Father Murphy, another Michael Landon production. He also became a familiar voice to football fans, working as a sports commentator, and appeared in numerous commercials that showcased his warmth and trustworthiness. In 2009, he was diagnosed with mesothelioma, a rare and aggressive cancer linked to asbestos exposure. He fought bravely but passed away on March 11, 2010, at the age of 69. Merlin Olsen's life was a rare blend of strength and gentleness. On the field, he was a warrior. On screen, a protector. In life, a beloved husband and father. He brought dignity to everything he did, and in Walnut Grove, he found a second home and left behind a legacy as solid as the man himself. Before Walnut Grove had schools, churches, or a bustling mercantile, it had one man with a dream, Lars Hansen. As the founder of the town and its moral compass in the early seasons of Little House on the Prairie, he was played by Carl Swinson, an actor whose voice, presence, and gravitas made every word feel important. Born on July 23, 1908, in Brooklyn, New York, Carl Swinson had a long and diverse career in entertainment, stretching back to the 1930s. He was a true character actor, appearing in radio dramas, on Broadway stages, in classic westerns, and on television shows like Gunsmoke and Perry Mason. By the time he joined Little House at age 66, he was already a seasoned performer, known for his intelligence and depth. As Lars Hansen, Swinson portrayed a Swedish immigrant who helped build Walnut Grove from the ground up. He was a teacher, a mentor, and a symbol of kindness and community. With his thick accent and steady wisdom, he gave the show a sense of generational continuity and cultural richness. Swinson's portrayal made Hansen feel real, like a man who had lived through hardship but never lost his heart. Off-screen, Carl was known for his intellect, his artistic passions, and his professionalism. He wasn't interested in stardom. He simply cared about the work. Interestingly, his death came just before a pivotal episode in which his character also died, adding a haunting layer of realism to one of the show's most emotional moments. Carl Swinson passed away on October 8, 1978, at the age of 70, just days before his final episode aired. The grief seen on screen was genuine. The cast and crew had lost more than a character. They had lost a mentor. Though his time on the Prairie was shorter than most, Carl Swinson gave the town of Walnut Grove its foundation, both in story and spirit. And that foundation, like his legacy, still stands. Hersha Parody may not have had the longest run on Little House on the Prairie, but her impact was unforgettable, especially as Alice Garvey, a character whose final scene remains one of the most devastating in the show's history. Behind the screen, Parody's own life would come to mirror the bittersweet tone of the show that made her famous. Born Betty Sandhoff on May 25, 1945, in Berea, Ohio, Hersha Parody was drawn to acting from a young age. She started on stage and slowly made her way into television. She originally auditioned for the role of Caroline Ingalls, but didn't get the part. Still, Michael Landon saw something in her and cast her in a few early roles, including a small appearance as Eliza Ingalls, Charles's sister-in-law. But it was her role as Alice Garvey, wife to Jonathan Garvey and mother to little Andy, that brought her into the spotlight. Parody joined the series in 1977 at just 32 years old. As Alice, she portrayed strength, tenderness, and grace. She was the kind of woman who held her family together without asking for recognition. Her tragic death in the fire at the School for the Blind is one of the most emotionally intense scenes in the entire series, and it shook viewers to the core. After her departure from Little House, Parody's acting career slowly faded. She took on a few minor roles, but eventually stepped away from the industry, living a quiet life away from Hollywood's glare. She rarely gave interviews, but fans remembered her and always asked about the woman who played Alice Garvey. Prairie passed away on August 23, 2023, at the age of 78 after a battle with a brain tumor. Her death came as a surprise to many fans who still remembered her face, her performance, and that haunting final scene. Though her time on the prairie was brief, Prairie brought one of its most powerful characters to life. And in doing so, she left behind a legacy of quiet, enduring strength. Steve Tracy's time on Little House on the Prairie was short, but unforgettable. As Percival Isaac Cohen Dalton, he stepped into a storyline that broke new ground for the series, one that explored culture, love, and identity with humor and sincerity. But beyond his character's journey, Tracy's own life was marked by courage, loyalty, and a quiet battle that ended far too soon. Born on October 3, 1952, in Canton, Ohio, Steve Tracy trained as an actor in Los Angeles and New York before landing the role that would define his career. At 28 years old, he joined the Little House cast as Nellie Oleson's unlikely love interest, something no one saw coming. On screen, Percival was calm, intelligent, and endlessly patient, a perfect counterbalance to Nellie's dramatic flair. Their whirlwind romance, marriage, and journey into parenthood showed a different side of Nellie and added surprising depth to both characters. It also allowed viewers to see a tender, steady energy in Steve's performance. Fans quickly fell in love with the couple, and with him. Off-screen, Tracy forged a close friendship with Allison Arngrim, Nellie Oleson, a bond that lasted until his final days. In the mid-1980s, Steve was diagnosed with AIDS, at a time when the disease was still widely misunderstood and heavily stigmatized. He faced it with bravery and honesty, speaking openly and helping bring attention to the AIDS crisis in a time of silence and fear. Steve Tracy passed away on November 27, 1986, at just 34 years old. His death devastated those who knew him and surprised many fans who never knew the man behind Percival had been suffering in silence. In a show rooted in family values and emotional storytelling, Steve Tracy brought both to life with humility and grace. Though his light dimmed early, the warmth he gave the world, on screen and off, continues to shine. James Jeter may not have had a lead role on Little House on the Prairie, but his presence helped build the fabric of Walnut Grove. As Hans Dorfler and in other supporting roles, he played the kind of small-town characters who made the world of the show feel authentic and alive, people you believed in, even if you didn't know their full story. Born on April 23, 1921, in Texas, Jeter's path to acting wasn't glamorous, but it was steady. He was a classic character actor, part of that generation of performers who didn't seek stardom, only the next meaningful role. With a long list of appearances in both film and television, he was known for bringing depth to even the smallest parts. Jeter was 52 years old when he first appeared on Little House, and although he never had center stage, he left an impression. His portrayals were grounded, his mannerisms natural, and his delivery always believable. He was one of those, I've seen him before, actors, the ones who slip into scenes effortlessly, making the fictional world feel real. Beyond Little House, Jeter worked in several other well-known productions, including appearances in Close Encounters of the Third Kind and The Nutty Professor. He remained active in Hollywood for decades, though mostly in quiet, supporting roles. Off-camera, very little is publicly known about his private life. He was not one for interviews or headlines. He simply let his work do the talking. James Jeter passed away on March 4, 2007, at the age of 85. His death didn't make front-page news, but for fans of Little House and classic TV, his familiar face and subtle performances remain part of the memory of an era. He may not have played a hero or a villain, but he brought life to the everyday, the townspeople, the shopkeepers, the neighbors. And sometimes, that's exactly what a great story needs. When Eddie Quillen appeared in Little House on the Prairie, Most viewers didn't know they were watching a piece of Hollywood history walk onto the screen. With roles like Buffalo Bill and other recurring characters throughout the series, Quillen brought a unique energy, part vaudeville, part heartland, to the background of Walnut Grove. But his journey to that small frontier town had begun decades earlier, in a completely different era. Born on March 31st, 1907, in Philadelphia, Eddie Quillen got a start in showbiz before talkies even existed. He was a child performer in vaudeville and broke into silent films in the 1920s. With his boyish face and knack for comedy, he starred in a string of early Hollywood productions and even worked alongside the likes of Clark Gable and Carole Lombard. His performance in Mutiny on the Bounty, 1935, helped solidify his place in cinematic history. By the time he appeared on Little House, Quillen was in his 60s. He took on minor but memorable roles, popping up in the occasional episode as Buffalo Bill or other frontier characters, often with a bit of mischief or a twinkle in his eye. Though not a lead player, his presence was always welcome, adding depth and a touch of old Hollywood charm to the show. Off-screen, Eddie was known as friendly, unpretentious, and endlessly professional. He had seen the industry evolve from silent reels to color television and carried that legacy with quiet pride. Eddie Quillen passed away on July 19, 1990, at the age of 83. His death marked the end of a remarkable career that spanned over 70 years. For Little House fans, he was one of those familiar faces who made the Prairie feel richer and more lived in. But for film historians, he was a bridge to another era, a living memory of Hollywood's golden age. In a show rooted in timeless values, Eddie Quillen brought with him the weight of a bygone time, reminding us all how far stories and storytellers can travel. Sam Edwards may not have been a household name, but his voice and presence were woven into the fabric of American entertainment for over 5 decades. On Little House on the Prairie, he appeared in multiple episodes as Mr. Bill Anderson and the Postman, a modest role, perhaps, but one that added to the show's sense of place and everyday life. What most viewers didn't know was that they were watching a true pioneer of American radio and television. Born on May 26, 1915, in Macon, Georgia, Sam was born into a showbiz family. His parents were both performers, and by the time he was a teenager, he was already acting on radio. He would go on to become one of the most recognizable voices of the golden age of radio, lending his vocal talents to shows like Gunsmoke, Dragnet, and One Man's Family. He transitioned smoothly into television and film, appearing in everything from Leave It to Beaver to Bonanza and The Andy Griffith Show. Edwards joined Little House on the Prairie at age 65, bringing with him decades of experience and a natural, down-to-earth charm. His characters weren't central to the plot, but they were vital to the rhythm of Walnut Grove, those quiet, familiar faces that make a town feel real. Off-camera, Sam was known as gentle, professional, and endlessly kind. He didn't chase the spotlight, but those who worked with him respected his legacy. He continued working into his late 80s, voicing characters in animated features and lending his steady tone to narration and commercials. Sam Edwards passed away on July 28, 2004, at the age of 89. Though he rarely received top billing, his contribution to American storytelling is immense. His voice was the background hum of comfort, reliability, and old-fashioned charm, something Little House had in abundance. He was the kind of actor who made you feel at home, and for a show like Little House on the Prairie, that made all the difference. Ivan Bonner may not have been one of the stars of Little House on the Prairie, but his appearances as Mr. Case and Dr. Mays added authenticity to the show's portrayal of life in the American frontier. He was one of those dependable character actors who made every scene a little better, even if you didn't know his name. Born on October 31st, 1924, in Newellton, Louisiana, Ivan Bonner's career was built on quiet, consistent work across film and television. He began acting in the 1950s, and over the decades, he appeared in countless series, including Mission, Impossible, Perry Mason, and Hawaii Five-0. He specialized in playing authority figures, doctors, lawyers, officers, men with calm voices and steady hands. Bonner first appeared on Little House at age 37, contributing to several episodes throughout the series. Though his screen time was often brief, his presence helped flesh out the broader world of Walnut Grove. He was one of those actors who gave weight to the everyday people, the shopkeepers, town officials, and visiting professionals who helped keep the story grounded in reality. Behind the scenes, Bonner was known for being soft-spoken, professional, and deeply respectful of his craft. He wasn't the kind of actor who sought out fame. Instead, he worked steadily, taking pride in each role, no matter how small. His career spanned over 3 decades, and though he never broke into leading man status, he built a legacy of reliable, thoughtful performances. Ivan Bonner passed away on December 8, 1988, at the age of 64. His death came quietly, like his career, but his contributions to television, especially to shows like Little House, are still appreciated by fans who recognize the value of the unsung hero. He may not have had the spotlight, but Ivan Bonner was part of the backbone that made Little House on the Prairie feel like a real, living world, and that's a legacy worth remembering. E.J. Andre wasn't a main character on Little House on the Prairie, but his appearances were always memorable. With his weathered face, gentle demeanor, and resonant voice, he played multiple roles throughout the series: Jed Cooper, Amos Toms, and others, often portraying older men filled with hard-earned wisdom and quiet strength. Born on August 14, 1908, in Detroit, Michigan, E.J. Andre came to acting later in life. He didn't start working steadily in Hollywood until the 1950s, but once he did, his career took off in a quiet, powerful way. He became a familiar face in television westerns and dramas, appearing in shows like Bonanza, Gunsmoke, and Dallas. His specialty? The wise elder, the gentle soul, the man whose presence alone could anchor a scene. Andre joined Little House in his early 60s, and over the course of the show, he slipped into several roles, always with grace and humility. Whether he was portraying a grieving father, a lonely widower, or a town elder seeking justice, he gave each part real humanity. He never overacted. He simply was. And in a show so centered around emotion and family, that kind of authenticity mattered. Off-screen, E.J. Andre was known as kind, unassuming, and deeply respectful of his craft. He wasn't one for the spotlight. He worked quietly and let the performances speak for themselves. E.J. Andre passed away on September 6, 1984, at the age of 76. His death marked the loss of a man who had made a living out of embodying life's quiet truths. He was the kind of actor who brought warmth to the screen just by walking into the frame. On Little House on the Prairie, he was never the main character, but he was always the heart of whatever scene he was in. Before he ever stepped into the world of Little House on the Prairie, Don Red Barry was already a legend of the silver screen. Known as a tough cowboy hero in the 1940s, Barry brought a different energy to the Prairie, one that crackled with tension, mystery, and a touch of menace. His portrayal of Judd Larrabee and other characters in the series offered a stark contrast to the show's usual warmth, reminding viewers that not everyone on the frontier had a kind heart. Born Donald Barry de Acosta on January 11, 1912, in Houston, Texas, he earned the nickname Red early in his career due to his fiery temper and signature red hair. He shot to fame as the star of The Adventures of Red Ryder in 1940, quickly becoming one of the era's most recognized B-movie cowboys. But while his early years were filled with promise, Barry's Hollywood journey was often rocky. He was known for his intense personality, both on-screen and off. He brought that fire to Little House, playing hard-edged characters like Judd Larrabee, a violent, prejudiced man who terrorized Walnut Grove in one of the show's darker storylines. Barry's performance was chilling, a reminder that the frontier wasn't always a place of peace and progress. Off-camera, his life was marked by personal struggles. He had a tumultuous reputation in Hollywood and faced difficulty finding steady roles later in life. Despite his once soaring fame, he often found himself in supporting parts, working hard to stay relevant in an industry that had moved on from its cowboy era. Don Red Barry died on July 17, 1980, at the age of 68, reportedly by suicide. His passing was a tragic end to a career that had once shone so brightly. Though his role on Little House was brief, it was unforgettable. In a show about community, family, and redemption, Don Red Barry brought the necessary darkness that made the light shine even brighter. His legacy may be complicated, but it is undeniably part of television history. Ted Gehring may not be a name every Little House on the Prairie fan instantly recalls, but his presence was unmistakable. With a stocky build, a no-nonsense voice, and the kind of face you'd expect to see behind a judge's bench or at the saloon counter, he played characters that brought grit and authenticity to the show's landscape. Most notably, he portrayed Ebenezer Sprague, Walnut Grove's stern, unsympathetic banker. Born on April 6, 1929, in Bisbee, Arizona, Ted Gehring was a classic journeyman actor, one of those dependable performers who could jump between genres and roles with ease. From westerns to sitcoms to police dramas, he built a solid career playing tough guys, blue-collar workers, and authority figures. By the time he joined Little House, he was in his late 40s and had already made appearances in shows like The Rockford Files, MASH Asterisk, and Gunsmoke. As Ebenezer Sprague, Gehring gave Little House one of its most memorable antagonists, not evil but cold, rigid, and driven by money rather than community. His interactions with Charles Ingalls and the townspeople often reflected the growing tensions between values of family and compassion versus the harsh demands of business and survival. Gehring's performance was understated but effective, making Sprague feel very real and very familiar. Off-screen, Ted Gehring remained largely out of the spotlight. He wasn't one to chase celebrity. Instead, he built a career on reliability, consistency, and quietly shaping the tone of every show he touched. That kind of career may not make headlines, but it earns deep respect in the industry. He passed away on September 28, 2000, at the age of 73. In Little House on the Prairie, Ted Gehring didn't play a hero, but he made the heroes stronger. He represented the kind of challenges real people face, those who don't always bend, don't always forgive, and don't always change. And that, too, is part of the story. In a world full of strong-willed pioneers and spirited townsfolk, there was something soft and comforting about Queenie Smith's presence on Little House on the Prairie. As Mrs. Amanda May Whipple, she appeared as a loving, kind, and quietly resilient woman, offering warmth in the background of the show's more dramatic moments. Born on September 8, 1898, in Texas, Queenie Smith had one of the longest and most unique careers of anyone on the show. She was a trained opera singer and ballet dancer, making her professional debut on Broadway in the early 1920s. From there, she transitioned into Hollywood films, appearing in classics like Showboat, 1936, and The Reluctant Dragon, 1941. By the time she appeared on Little House, she was already in her mid-70s, a living relic of a very different era of American entertainment. Queenie joined the cast at age 75, playing Mrs. Whipple, the town's seamstress and mother to the deaf boy, Benny. Her performance brought a quiet dignity and emotional weight to the character, especially in episodes that tackled themes of disability, grief, and perseverance. She wasn't flashy or loud. She was simply human, and that's what made her unforgettable. Behind the scenes, Queenie was beloved for her grace, professionalism, and the wisdom she brought from decades in the industry. She was part of Hollywood's golden age, yet still found her way into 1970s television, proving that true talent never ages out. She passed away on August 5, 1978, at the age of 79, shortly after her appearances on the show. Her death was felt deeply by the cast and crew, many of whom had admired her both as a colleague and as a Hollywood legend. Queenie Smith brought a touch of old-world charm to Little House on the Prairie. She reminded viewers, and perhaps her younger co-stars, that gentleness is a kind of strength too. In a town built on survival, she gave us softness, history and heart. With a name like Sunshine Parker, you'd expect warmth, and that's exactly what he brought to every role he played. On Little House on the Prairie, Parker made several appearances as background characters, a driver, a freight man, and other hardworking townsfolk who added depth and texture to life on the frontier. His face was rugged, his demeanor rough around the edges, but there was always a quiet, twinkling kindness in his performances. Born Lloyd Sunshine Parker on June 10, 1927, in Lawn, Texas, he didn't enter acting until later in life, but once he did, his unique look and authentic Western style made him a go-to for frontier and working-class roles. He may not have had many lines, but when he was on screen, you noticed him. Parker appeared in a range of TV shows and films, especially in the 1970s and 1980s, where he often played drifters, old cowboys, and eccentric locals. His most famous roles came after Little House, including appearances in Roadhouse, 1989, with Patrick Swayze and Tremors, 1990. But his work on Little House gave him early exposure and allowed him to inhabit the kind of character he'd come to define: rough, real, and deeply human. Off-screen, not much is widely known about Sunshine Parker's personal life. He remained out of the limelight and was known more for his characters than for himself. That suited him just fine. He wasn't chasing fame. He was simply doing what he loved: acting. Sunshine Parker passed away on February 17, 1999, at the age of 71. His death didn't make headlines, but his legacy lives on in the roles he played, small, honest moments that made the fictional world of Walnut Grove feel like a real community. He was one of those actors you didn't need to see for long to remember. And in a show that celebrated the dignity of ordinary people, Sunshine Parker fit right in. Moses Gunn's appearance in Little House on the Prairie as Joe Kagan wasn't just another supporting role. It was a groundbreaking moment in a show that often reflected traditional frontier life. As one of the few black characters given a recurring role in the series, Joe Kagan's story was about perseverance, redemption, and finding one's place in a world not always built to welcome you. And Moses Gunn brought him to life with soul, dignity, and raw emotional depth. Born on October 2nd, 1929, in St. Louis, Missouri, Moses Gunn rose from humble beginnings to become a powerful force in American theater and film. He earned his master's degree in drama from the University of Kansas and went on to co-found the Negro Ensemble Company in New York, a major platform for black actors and playwrights at a time when opportunities were scarce. Gunn was already a respected stage actor and had appeared in films like Roots and Shaft before he joined Little House in the late 1970s. At age 48, he took on the role of Joe Kagan, a former boxer turned farmer who faced discrimination, personal loss, and spiritual rebirth. Kagan's storylines were emotional and complex, exploring themes of racism, acceptance, and inner strength. Gunn played him not as a stereotype, but as a fully formed man, flawed, searching, and deeply human. Off-screen, Moses Gunn was known for his intellect, integrity, and dedication to challenging the boundaries of the entertainment industry. He continued acting well into the 1990s in both television and film, earning an Emmy nomination and respect as one of the great character actors of his generation. Moses Gunn passed away on December 16, 1993, at the age of 64 due to complications from asthma. His passing was a loss not just to Little House fans, but to the entire acting community. In a series rooted in family, community, and resilience, Moses Gunn's Joe Kagan stood as a symbol of quiet strength and hard-won acceptance. His performance opened a door for deeper storytelling and left behind a legacy that stretched far beyond Walnut Grove. Little House on the Prairie was more than just a television show. It was a place we visited each week, a simpler time, a smaller town, a world where even the hardest moments were softened by love, community, and hope. But behind that world stood real people, actors, artists, humans. Each of them brought something irreplaceable to the screen. And now, many of them are gone. We've looked back at the lives of 20 remarkable actors, some who graced the spotlight, others who quietly built the world around it. Michael Landon, the father figure of a generation. Catherine McGregor, the villain we love to hate. Victor French, Merlin Olsen, Hersha Parody, Steve Tracy. So many names, so many lives, each with their own triumphs and heartbreaks. Some found lasting fame. Others faded from view. Some died young, leaving behind questions and sorrow. Others lived long lives and passed peacefully, their contributions etched into history. But all of them mattered. They mattered to the fans, to their families, to television itself. These actors gave more than performances. They gave pieces of themselves. They made us laugh. They made us cry. And in many ways, they raised us. As we say goodbye to them now, we don't just mourn their passing. We celebrate what they left behind. They gave life to a little house, on a little prairie, and made it feel like home. Their voices may be silent now. Their faces may have faded from the screen. But their spirits? They're still with us, in every rerun, in every memory, in every quiet tear from a fan who remembers. And if you've made it this far, then you remember too. So subscribe to this channel to keep these stories alive. Because this isn't just about actors, it's about legacies. And legacies like these, they deserve to be told.